our guest speaker for our lunch portion of the day. Again, before I read a bio, because I like to go off script a lot, is Daniel Eliot was the director, the manager of the Cybersecurity and Small Business Innovative Research Grant Program, Tech Commercialization for SBDC Delaware. So for those of you who don't know, SBDC is a national program with 1,000+ offices. Actually, Boulder SBDC is the #1 SBDC in the nation right now. We were in the top 10 a few years ago ourselves. So Colorado is an amazing state of SBDCs, but we still, even with that, rely on each other heavily throughout the nation to support and grow the programs that we have, because why reinvent the wheel? We're one big happy family, truly, we are. So I met Daniel at our national meeting a few years ago, I would say, about 3 years ago, and he was running this amazing, well-known program in SBDC, at SBDC Delaware. And so Daniel helped us launch our program, gave us everything he created, gave us risk assessment tools, gave us videos, which are still on our website because we're still creating our own. That's why you'll see SBDC Delaware logo on a lot of our materials still. But I just want to thank you personally from the stage and say thank you for all your support. And it was our privilege to have him move on to the National Cybersecurity Alliance. And he's also one of the main leads for the Special Interest Group for America's Small Business Development Centers on cybersecurity, which I have a privilege of being on as well. So with that, a little short intro. Daniel Eliot is Director of Small Business Programs at the National Cybersecurity Alliance. NCSA is a leading neutral nonprofit public-private partnership devoted to strengthening America's cybersecurity through awareness and education. At NCSA, Daniel runs Cybersecure My Business, which is a comprehensive national program designed to help businesses of all sizes learn to be safer and more secure online. Daniel brings together the federal government, state and local governments, academia, and the private sector to discuss cutting-edge issues and create and implement high-quality, large-scale education and awareness efforts for the business community. Welcome, Daniel.
Well, thank you all for having me. I enjoy my job tremendously because I get to go around the country all the time and talk to small businesses. I started this week in Charlottesville, Virginia at their Small Business Cybersecurity Summit. Yesterday I was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and then I got to fly here this morning, you missed the morning part, to get here to talk to all of you. So I really appreciate you inviting me out here. You're exactly right. The Colorado SBDC is a leader in cybersecurity efforts when it comes to small business. They really are, and truly due to your leadership, truly due to it. So you covered the National Cybersecurity Alliance. How many of you have heard of the National Cybersecurity Alliance before I came here? All right, so I have a little work to do, I guess. Not all of you have heard of us. So many people have heard of Stay Safe Online or Stop, Think, Connect, but not many people have heard National Cybersecurity Alliance, who actually powers much of that effort. And so, as she said in my bio, we're a nonprofit organization devoted to cybersecurity education and awareness. And we do that through large-scale partnerships with a lot of organizations, like the Department of Homeland Security, who provides assistance with National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and our Board of Advisors, which consists of Microsoft and Google and Symantec, and you name it, they're on it. And together, we're able to combine our private and public partners to deploy this national effort. So National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, you may be aware, is right now. We are actually in the last few days of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It is recognized every October. And have any of you taken part in National Cybersecurity Awareness Month this month? Well, I have a lot of work to do. My gosh. All right, Colorado. October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So next year, all of you will be participating, I presume. So now, it is the national effort to really rally consumers, businesses, everyone in the country around the notion that cybersecurity is a shared effort. It is a shared responsibility. Whether you're a mom, a dad, a child, whether you're in academia, whether you're a small business, large business, government, it is all our shared responsibility to secure this country, all right? And so we do that through a focused effort in October. But of course, it is a year-round effort. We can't just do it in October. So we deploy it through 4 themes throughout the month that Homeland Security approves. The first theme, of course, this year was Make Your Home a Haven for Online Safety. So you may have seen a lot of online resources devoted to how to make your home safe. I mean, look at all of the Internet of Things devices that we're bringing into our homes, or just simply routers that we have at our homes, right? How are we securing this information or these devices that we have within our homes? You know, the Consumers Union is looking at dolls that are internet-enabled, right? 1, why do we need an internet-enabled doll? But 2, you know, what are the risks that are associated or that come with purchasing that? How do we become good, savvy consumers? And so the second week, we focused on millions of rewarding jobs. So how do we improve and increase the amount of people entering the workforce in cybersecurity? This third week was focused on business. So whether you're in the board or in the break room, it's everyone's responsibility in the workforce to secure an organization. And then, of course, this week is focused on critical infrastructure. And for those of you who are part of the 16 areas of critical infrastructure, I hope you're taking part. And actually, the commissioner mentioned the DHS Cubed voluntary program. And just yesterday, they released a roadmap that they've been working on. And it's on their website now. And it's specifically focused on critical infrastructure. So I don't think, because it was released yesterday, I didn't add it to this presentation because they sent it to you earlier this week. But if you want that information, it's on the DHS Cubed voluntary program website. And it's a roadmap that they just released. So there are a few ways you can participate in National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So first off, you can just use the hashtag CyberAware, and that'll connect you to the larger conversation going on in the country. There are also a few other ways. So you can take part in our Facebook Live events by viewing them. You can take part in our Twitter chats if you are a tweeter. You can also become a champion of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's all free. You sign up as a champion, you get the logo, you get a packet of resources that you can then deploy through your media channels. And it's, again, you don't have to recreate the wheel. It's equipping you with resources so that you can amplify all of the information that we have collected throughout the years. So that's my advertisement for National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So now that everybody's going to participate next year, we'll be set. So why small business? You may have talked about this already, right, at this conference. Cybersecurity is not a sexy topic for small businesses. It's really not. You know, I am amazed at how many people are in this room. It is so hard to get small businesses to show up to a cybersecurity conference, and I do these all across the country. Access to capital. Now that's a sexy topic. Social media marketing. How do you get more people in the door? Now that's a sexy topic. But when you start talking about loss of critical employee, fire, flood, the road shutting down in front of your office, cybersecurity, crickets. Nobody shows up because nobody wants to think about it until it happens. And I'll also say that small businesses in particular often think that they're too small to be a target. And that is a huge misconception. And so I am so happy to see, again, that you are all here because small businesses often will lack the resources to be able to defend themselves against a cyber attack or to recover if they have a successful attack. So we want to be sure that you're equipped with resources to protect yourselves and to respond. And so what I don't want you to do is, after my talk, or after any of these talks really, is to leave and unplug, right? I don't want you to unplug that refrigerator that orders your yogurt when you run out, or unplug your router, or unplug your laptop, whatever it is, because we need to be connected. But, well, we need to be connected in some ways. But again, being a savvy consumer. But I will say that I want you to feel empowered when you leave this workshop, my session, the entire day. I want you to feel empowered to use the internet safely and securely to do what you need to do, all right? So the Cybersecurity My Business program That is the National Cybersecurity Alliance's effort to go out and train small businesses. So we do trainings all over the country, bringing together federal partners, SBDCs, chambers of commerce, et cetera, to accomplish much of what you're doing here. And I'm going to give you a slice of the workshop in this hour presentation, but we usually break it up into tables like this and have small businesses working through a working session, workbook style. You're sitting down, you're writing out answers, and you're really engaging with the content. Because Sage on the Stage is good for some types of learners, but so many people do not learn well by somebody just talking at them. And so I encourage you, as you do more of these, I'm hoping you're engaging with the content versus just sitting, listening at it. So before I talk more about cybersecurity, I should probably get everybody on the same definition of what cybersecurity is. Because usually when I ask people, what is cybersecurity? The first thing people say is firewalls or hack or whatever it is, a lot of defensive mechanisms. And so the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who created the NIST cybersecurity framework, they define it as the ability to protect or defend the use of cyberspace from cyber attack. It sounds very federal. That is a very federal definition. Rightfully so. They're a federal agency, right? They're through the Department of Commerce. They are supposed to be protecting our commerce, right? So the National Cybersecurity Alliance tried to soften that a bit. And again, it comes back to that empowering piece, right? Enabling people and businesses to do more online with trust and confidence, right? That's a little better. I think so, right? It's not scary because you shouldn't be scared to use these technologies, but you need to, again, know how to use them effectively. So with a working definition of cybersecurity, this isn't novel to National Cybersecurity Alliance, this concept of people, process, technology. You may have seen this before, but I want to break it down just a little bit. So notice I did not put the word technology first because so many people assume that cybersecurity is a technology issue, first and foremost. It's technology. Actually, I was on the phone with the Better Business Bureau, she said, when did technology get so evil? It's like, well, technology didn't get evil. It was the people who learned how to use it maliciously. So it's really a people problem first, right? How do we equip our people with the skills to identify a malicious email, to smell the smoke before the fire, if you will? How do we equip our people with the skills to identify when something has gone wrong in either their systems they're working in or within their office? And next to people, I mean, look at the word security. I mean, if you just write the word security down, this is an interactive session. Go ahead, write the word security down. If you circle the U, and you circle the R, and you circle the I and T together, in the word security, it spells you are it. It's in the word, right? It's in the word. You are it. It is a people problem. So how do we train our employees? How do we train ourselves to be better stewards of data that we're holding and equipment? So next is that process then, right? So outside of people, then do we have processes and procedures in place that guide good behavior? Put parameters around that. For instance, look at all the situations that businesses are put in when it comes to wire transfer fraud, right? A lot of times it starts with the people, right? They receive an email saying, this is your CEO, please wire $500,000 or whatever it is to me immediately, right? So they're like, okay, oh my gosh, let me do that. But what happens oftentimes is when it's successful, there's not a process in place for a secondary verification, right? So a process in place would be, I get an email requesting a wire transfer, so then the process to guide my behavior is, I need to call that individual and verify the legitimacy of that request, and then it should be approved, right? There needs to be blockades in place. So that's the process piece of it. And then lastly, the technology. And because people and processes come first, because no matter how much technology you throw at an organization, if you don't have processes in place, if people aren't trained effectively, then the technology really isn't effective, right? So think about cybersecurity in those three ways: please. So the 5-step approach. So cybersecurity, as you all hopefully know, is a resiliency-based approach. It's a risk-based approach. You should be building it in just like when you're thinking of fire, flood, risks of loss of critical employee, et cetera, building cybersecurity into that risk strategy. And so part of it, as we've broken it down, is based off the NIST framework. So how do you identify the threats, right? And then protect the assets, protect those crown jewels that you have, the physical devices that you have, the physical setup of your office, the data that you're collecting, storing, transmitting, et cetera. And then once you identify them, how do you protect them? And then how do you detect when something has gone wrong? And then after detect, how do you respond and recover to a successful attack? I always use the phrase, you don't want to go out and buy fire insurance when the building's burning down, right? You don't want to create a cybersecurity plan right when you have a breach. That's the last time you need to create a cybersecurity plan. You need to have a strategy ahead of time so you understand how to respond. Who's responsible for responding in different ways? And so because I live in Philadelphia, I always have to use a Ben Franklin quote, because he's everywhere in Philadelphia. By failing to prepare, you're prepared to fail, right? We're getting into the mindset of building a cybersecurity strategy into your business operations, right? And so, I think of cybersecurity and a solid cybersecurity strategy as a competitive advantage for an organization. Right? If you have a cybersecurity strategy in place, that's a selling point if you want to build partnerships with other organizations, particularly like the federal government, right? Who's looking at if you have a cyber strategy in place. So there are a few misconceptions I'd like to start with. I feel constrained. I'm going to pull this out. I can't stand behind a podium. All right, so breaking down misconceptions. So first off, you have nothing to worry about if you have antivirus installed on your computer, right? We see, and this happens often at home, because sometimes we're pretty good at cybersecurity when it comes to being at work. Right? Because we have processes and procedures that guide our behavior in some cases. But the moment we get home, we think antivirus is good enough. I'm safe, right? And so that's the technology piece, but there are the behavior and process piece that follow, or that come before, I'm sorry. A strong passphrase is all you need, right? Again, that's a component of a cybersecurity strategy, but antivirus, anti-malware, passphrases, those are just components. So this is a big one. If there are any lawyers in the room, outsourcing to a third party will wash your hands of liability. We understand that many small businesses, and encourage many small businesses to outsource your information technology, your information security needs, because you might be a professional at, biology or in agriculture or whatever. Cybersecurity is not your thing, and nobody's expecting you to be a cybersecurity expert. And so outsourcing that is important. And so what you don't do, though, is when you outsource your liability. And many times in the small business community, we have a handshake that guides the agreement, right? It's like, oh, you're going to take care of my cybersecurity? Great. Handshake. Okay, good. And then something happens, and then who's liable, right? And then everybody's pointing fingers. And so being sure when it comes to protecting your critical assets that you have agreements in place. Cybersecurity is a technology issue. I've already hammered this into the ground in the first 10 minutes, so I'm not going to talk anymore about that. Cybersecurity is the job of the IT staff. For those of you who are the IT staff, I'm sure you're saying amen, right? Cybersecurity is not just the job of the IT staff. And actually, IT staff aren't technically cybersecurity professionals. Those are different career tracks. What I will say is that cybersecurity is it's an organization-wide culture. Everyone needs to be responsible for cybersecurity. And I think there's actually a topic coming up later today about it's everyone's responsibility or something like that, cybersecurity. And it is within the organization. If they have access to email, if they have access to a database, they're responsible for cybersecurity just as much as the IT staff. Cyber attacks always come from external actors. We're always thinking about Russia or China or wherever else. But actually, if you're in the healthcare industry, Most of the time, the actors come from within the organization. And so making sure that when we're thinking about the threats, we understand that many of the threats can also come within the organization. Think of someone who didn't get a promotion and they're not happy about it. You know, that could potentially be a threat to your organization. Millennials are better at cybersecurity than others. It's actually a study by Microsoft that proved that otherwise. But I know many of you can probably agree that oftentimes in an organization, big or small, we give responsibility for managing the social media and the website to whom? To the youngest person in the organization, because they're young. They know how to use the internet. No, they don't, actually. So they don't know how to use social media oftentimes, unless they've been professionally trained, to the benefit of an organization, right? Social media is not something you just throw a profile on. It takes training to know how to improve a business using social media. Using a website and using it securely, that takes training. And so what I just want to say is that before giving the keys to the kingdom, or the keys to the kingdom to the youngest person in the organization, be sure you train them. And that leads to a little digression that I have, and it's referring to hiring people and training people. And I'm going to repeat this later on as well. But when you hire individuals, show of hands, actually, how many of you were trained on good email best practices, how to use email securely before given access to your email within an organization? One person. That's usually the number of people who raise their hands in these. Yeah, usually it's one person.
I started at mine before there was email.
You started yours before there was email. Okay. But then when they adopted email, did they train you on it before giving you access to it? Okay. So with email being the primary threat vector, right, it is the easiest way for hackers to get into an organization. Why do we give people access to email before training them on how to use it securely? We give them access to email, and then a year later, we have them do the required computer-based training for an hour to teach them on how to how to identify a malicious email. They probably don't pay attention to that webinar. They might sit in on a class. But again, they've had a whole year or longer to really mess up your business before you train them on how to use email safely and securely. Again, be considering that as you're building your organizations and you're bringing on more individuals. You might be bringing on interns. We work a lot with congressional staffers, and these congressional officers, or congressmen and congresswomen, you know, they're huge targets for cyber attacks, and they bring in all these interns. They don't teach them anything about cybersecurity, and so they're huge targets. Same goes for any of your local elected officials. And so that's a tangent, but I just want to be sure that I cover that. Compliance with industry standards is enough. Many of you have to comply with PCI security standards or HIPAA security standards. That is not a cybersecurity strategy. That is a industry compliance piece, right? And so being sure that compliance is a piece of your cybersecurity strategy, not the entire strategy. Digital and physical security are separate things altogether, right? So when we think of cybersecurity, we think of digital assets, right? We think of the data that we're storing on our servers or whatever it is. But think of physical security. Think of the physical setup of your office. Have any of you bought a car recently? Sorry if anybody is an auto salesman or woman. But look at auto dealers. They are often free ranges of computers in unattended cubicles. When I bought my car, I was the only person in the sales room with about 15 computers. I could have plugged anything into the back of one of those computers, and look at all the data they're transmitting and storing. Oh my gosh. Thinking about the physical security of your organization. How can people access your servers? Can they walk into your building and pick it up and walk out with it, right? Thinking about how you're securing your physical assets just as much as your digital assets. New software devices are automatically secure when you buy them. Or when you apps are automatically secure when you download them. Or social media is automatically secure when you log into it, right? Unfortunately, we have to log into all of these systems that we buy. We have to be savvy consumers and set up anytime you buy a new technology, anytime you download a new app, anytime you sign on to a new social media, always go to the privacy settings and the security settings and configure those to meet the needs of you as an individual or you as an organization. Because typically, they're wide open, and then you have to go in and kind of chip away at it and set the security standards, right? And think about it when you're buying these new technologies for your home. I can't stress that enough, right? So many are now Wi-Fi enabled, and we just automatically go out and buy them because they're cool and they make life convenient. But with convenience comes risk. And so just being thoughtful of that. Cybersecurity for work doesn't extend to my home environment, vice versa. Again, I talked about that a little bit, right? We're good at cybersecurity typically at work, but then we get home, then we start logging in and doing our banking on Starbucks' Wi-Fi, or we start doing whatever. And so being sure that we're taking good concepts that we deploy at work and we deploy them at home. And we teach our children and our families about good cybersecurity hygiene and practices once we go home, all right? If you train an employee once, they'll retain it forever. I don't even have to talk about that one. Continual training, right? The cybersecurity industry continues to evolve just like everything else. And so continually training your employees and updating yourselves as well when it comes to cybersecurity. So when we go around the country doing these workshops, we use the NIST cybersecurity framework, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, and we break it down into the separate sections. Now, when we start, we use fire as an example because we tend to be pretty good at physical security when it comes to fire and flood or hurricane, whatever it is, right? So with identify, we need to identify the building. We need to protect that building. That's a critical asset of ours, right? And this, of course, is not extensive listing. We need to protect the assets, the machinery in our building, or the, whatever other equipment we have. We need to protect our staff. How do we protect them? We protect them by having fire exits within the building, right? Fire exit there, I don't know, I guess over there as well, right? Smoke alarms. We have smoke alarms to be able to identify if something is going wrong. The alarm goes off. We label our inventory. We have sprinkler systems to get rid of the fire. We might have O2 sensors that pull the oxygen out of the air and suffocate the fire, whatever it is. With detection. Huh? Oh, I thought you were making a comment to me.
Doesn't the oxygen, taking oxygen out of the room kill you too?
Well, hopefully you're out of the room. Hopefully you have a good process to get people out of the building before that starts. That's another workshop, though. Detect. How do we detect that something has gone wrong, right? Bells and whistles, right? We have the alarm going off. We might smell an unusual odor. We might feel heat coming from a particular area, right? We might notice something unusual. Right, so we have those sensory factors that are telling us something is wrong. And I promise I'm going to get back to cybersecurity. And then how do we respond to a fire? Hopefully, many of you have policies and procedures in place for how to respond to a fire, right? You follow your fire procedures that hopefully you have articulated to the entire staff. You meet at the mailbox. You have someone who calls 911, or, in some organizations, it's a different number. You should probably call your insurance, right? And actually protect, insurance should probably be part of protect as well. And then how do we get back in business? Again, because the goal for you is to serve your customers. So we purchase our new items, we notify our customers, we clean up the smoke and water damage, we have our lessons learned. God forbid, we have a fire drill or an actual fire, and everybody leaves the building in different exits, and they go to different locations, and then we can't figure out where they are. So we don't know who's in the building and who's out of the building, right? So you document your lessons learned, and then you improve your policies and procedures. All of these concepts can be easily applied to cybersecurity, right? So look at identify, protect, detect, respond, recover with cybersecurity. So identify. Hopefully you have gone through this exercise within your own home and your own organization. You've identified what are the assets I need to protect, because you can't protect what you don't know you have. So what are those assets? They could be information in your customer relationship manager, right? Those social security numbers that you're collecting or storing, the dates of birth, biometrics that you're collecting and storing, card information. So identifying all the data we're collecting, storing, creating, transmitting, whatever we're doing with it. And also, part of that identify is figuring out if we actually need to be collecting that data, storing that data, transmitting that data, right? So identifying, once you know what you're collecting, storing, creating, transmitting, do you need to be doing that, right? In order to operate your business effectively. We might, hopefully, storing HR records, right? We have the physical devices in our organization. Who has laptops, physical tablets that they're carrying around? Sorry to you salespeople if you're a distributed salesperson, but salespeople lose everything, everything out in the field. My gosh, look at all the numbers of laptops and cell phones that have been lost by salespeople. But they're busy, right? They're out in the field, they're traveling all over the place, they're busy people. But do you have track of who has access to certain devices and where they are, how they're maintaining those devices, etc. Right? That's a risk management procedure for your organization. So after physical devices, looking at classified information. Are we collecting classified or storing classified information or intellectual property? Some of you might be R&D-based companies. How am I protecting all of the innovations that we're developing within our organization? Once you've identified, again, how are we going to protect all of that? So we might start with email authentication, catching bad emails when they're coming through. We might start with encryption. We might be using encrypted flash drives. Flash drives are tiny devices that cause huge problems, right? So a lot of people will pick them up at a conference. They will pick them up in the parking lot because they find one. They're like, oh, I wonder what's on here. And then they stick it into their laptop. So in your organization, encouraging or making it a requirement to have encrypted flash drives if you allow the use of flash drives. Encrypting data both in transit and at rest within your organization. And encrypting, and I know all of you aren't technology people, so encryption is just kind of muddling that information, right? Transferring or making the data so that it's unreadable by other people unless they have a key. Now, what I will say is many state data breach notification laws will say, you know, you're not liable for the breach if the data was encrypted unless they get the key too. And then you're in trouble if they have the data and the key, right? So do you have data backup procedures? I always liken data backup to diversifying your financial portfolio, right? You want to keep your money in many different places. Same goes with your data. Right? How are you diversifying where you're keeping your data, how it is stored? Because if you have a ransomware attack come up and they want $500 or $1,000 or $20,000, then do you have data that you can use in place of that, right? So you don't have to pay the ransom. And actually, I will say, Federal Bureau of Investigation says do not pay the ransom. I know it's an individual choice that you make. That's just guidance from federal law enforcement. Are you creating and enforcing policies and procedures? We tend to be very good in small, medium, big business at creating policies and procedures. What we're not good at is communicating those to people, right? We might have a huge HR file that is full of policies and procedures that are beautifully written, but not one person in the organization knows anything about them, right? And so making sure that as we create and enforce, or that when we create policy procedures, that we are communicating them and we're enforcing them regularly. Physical device storage and access. Again, I talked a little bit about that. Where are we storing our server? Do they have access to it? And also as far as physical device, physical office setup. right? And how people get access to your building, right? In critical infrastructure, a lot of times you see, for instance, energy sector, a lot of times they'll have a cubicle or a vestibule that you'll walk in and you check in with an attendant or a secretary or administrative assistant, and they'll verify who you are. But a lot of times cyber criminals will impersonate the HVAC person or the IT person. They'll say, hi, I'm here to service your IT. The other person called out, or I'm here to service your HVAC. And they're like, okay, go on in. And then they let them in, right? Securing physical access to your organization. There's another example there was a small accounting firm in Vermont where it was tax season and they ran out of room in the back office. So they started stacking all the tax returns in the lobby. What risk does that open up, right? But let's be realistic. We're small businesses, right? You're busy. You're thinking of serving the customer, getting these things done, getting paid, paying your employees. I understand. But thinking about the risks that you're opening yourself up to within the organization when you make some of these choices. Cybersecurity insurance. I'm not a cybersecurity insurance professional, so I can't talk a lot about that, but I will say within your small business, there are many policies focused on cybersecurity insurance. You might even have a session, I don't know, not today, in the future. Actually, on November, I forget the date, but on staysafeonline.org, the second Tuesday of November, we're having a cybersecurity insurance webinar for small business. It's free. It's with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. So you can learn more about cybersecurity insurance on that webinar if you'd like. But I will say that you should seriously consider looking at some policies, particularly if you are concerned about a cyber breach. And then lastly, with protect, and there are many things we could have thrown into this protect section, but I want to emphasize segmenting access. And by segmenting access, what I really mean is managing who has access to certain information within your organization, right? Many times in small businesses, we see individuals or, the manager or the IT director or the owner just giving everyone access to all of the information within the organization. Why? It makes things more efficient because if everybody has access to it, then, if I need something, I can call anybody. What does that do? It opens you up to a whole host of vulnerabilities because if people have access to the HR records and they don't need it, then if they're breached, then it's much easier for your organization's HR records to get breached. Or if people have administrative access to your website or administrative access to your servers and they don't need it, then what happens is if they get breached or if they get a cyber incident coming through their email or whatever else, then that opens you up to vulnerabilities. So segmenting access, giving people access to the information and the functions they need to complete their job. That's it. That's the only access they need. And I will also say that a lot of times the owner of the organization, because they're the owner, they have access to everything. They shouldn't. They don't need access to everything because a lot of times they're the target. And so only the people who need the access to the different systems should have that access. So with detection, ransomware message is probably the most obvious, right? That's the huge smoke. Actually, that's the flames when you have the ransomware attack come up. Your technologies block bad emails. We often see the customer feedback loop. And with customer feedback loop, I mean customers calling your organization saying, you guys keep calling me asking for my social security number, and I've given it to you a million times. Or, you guys keep emailing me asking for this information, and I've given it to you. Right? Or they haven't given it to you, but they're just letting you know. What you don't want to do is have staff members brush that under the rug. A complaint from a customer, I know complaints from customers are always amazing and insightful, but when it comes to a potential cybersecurity issue, that should definitely raise the red flags. And then suspicious behavior by customers and employees, right? You have employees asking other employees for their passwords. That's suspicious. Or if you have employees or customers in the server room, if you actually have a server room or server closet, that's suspicious if they shouldn't be there, right? So identifying what some of the smoke is before the fire, right? So you can, again, raise the red flag that something might be wrong. So hopefully you don't have to get to the respond part, right? But once you get there, how do you respond? Again, don't buy fire insurance when the building's burning down. Don't create a cybersecurity strategy when you have a breach or a potential breach. And one of the biggest pieces of advice we have to say is disconnect the potentially affected computer or computers from the network. We don't encourage you to start doing forensic analysis yourself. Leave that to a professional, right? Because you could actually destroy a lot of forensic evidence. And so disconnect the affected computer from the network and connect with a local IT expert or local security expert who can help you. All right, and that's where events like this are amazing, because there are probably IT or information security professionals in this room who focus services specifically on small businesses. You don't have to engage them in a contract, though they probably want you to. Sure, why not? But you at least need to know who to turn to. You need to have a contact. And so that's a really great opportunity today for you to do that. And then connecting with your law enforcement. I will say, is anybody here from FBI InfraGard? Okay, so FBI InfraGard is an organization really focused on information sharing for critical infrastructure. You have a local office here, but they are a great resource if you have a breach or if you have questions. And it's a great resource for getting more information on current security concerns. With state data breach notification laws, every state has one now. And so what I will say with that is be sure that you're aware of what all is in your state's data breach notification law, and make sure that you know if you have a successful breach and it affects people in multiple states, then you have to comply with every single state's data breach notification law. So if you have no other reason to develop a cybersecurity strategy, think of the pain in the behind complying with every state's data breach notification law would be for impacted customers. That alone would make me run out of this building right now and go start developing a cyber strategy. So once you finally respond, how do you recover and get back in business, right? So first off, you document your lessons learned. What did we do well? What did we not do well? How did this threat come to be? And what happened? How did we respond to it? How do we improve our policies and procedures, right? Because there's always a lessons learned, and there's always ways that we can improve what we've been doing. How do we train or retrain our employees? Now, I will say this is hard. And it really requires diversified approaches to training. It doesn't just involve handing them a pamphlet saying, read this information on ransomware or attend this webinar. It really involves multiple kind of points of attack, if you will, from your perspective. Giving them trainings like this, giving them the physical handouts, giving them online opportunities. And there are so many resources that are free that you can develop a cybersecurity education and awareness program for your business at no cost, really no cost. And actually the Federal Trade Commission just last week released I have the resource on the slide, but it's ftc.gov/small business, and it's a whole host of resources specifically focused on small business cybersecurity and how you can teach employees and business partners about cybersecurity. So I encourage you to check that out. But it is difficult. And look at password management, right? People still use password 123 as their password, right? Or password as their password, right? Still. Change in behavior is difficult. It is really difficult. And so you have to try to get them in any different way you can. And then take steps to repair your reputation. That might be in the form of a PR firm, or that might be just an effective communication strategy to your audience or to your business partners. And so with the identify, protect, detect, respond, recover out of the way, I like to end with just a few quick wins, some actionable advice that you can take and employ in your small business. So first off, when it comes to backup, I emphasized backup earlier. We use the 3-2-1 model. Some of you may have heard of this, but if you haven't, it's a great way to remember it, and I think it's a great approach to data backup. 3, keep at least 3 copies of your data. 2, keep the backed up data on 2 different storage types. Now you're starting to see my scenario with diversifying your portfolio, right? Your financial portfolio. And then keep at least 1 copy of the data off-site. God forbid the building burns down, you have a tornado, etc. Keeping the information or the data off-site is a good strategy for, again, business continuity, being able to provide services and goods to your customers, to your business partners, etc., when you need to. Quick wins with email security. Again, because email is really the way hackers get into small businesses, primarily. Now, I will say if any of you are restaurateurs, then point of sale systems tend to be the primary way, or the primary threat for a restaurant. But with business email, my gosh, they know that people click on those links. They know that people download anything when they're like, oh, you got a free gift card to Lowe's. Oh my gosh, I did? Thank you. And they're getting very sophisticated. But it's not only a link in an email. It's not only a downloadable PDF or document. It might also just be an email asking you to call a specific number or go to a website and enter information into a form field. And so teaching employees how, again, before you give them access to email, how to smell the smoke, how to identify a potentially risky email. And we were at a conference in DC a few months ago, and the guy had a great, he called it the BS factor, the be skeptical factor. I love that. I hope he didn't copyright that. So the be skeptical factor. Be skeptical of emails when you receive them. I always say if you get a request from any of your banking institutions through email, don't click the link through your email. Just go to the actual profile on their website. Don't even do it on the email. When in doubt, just throw the email out and go to the actual organization's website. I will also say within small business, a lot of times we don't turn on 2-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication because it adds an extra roadblock in the way of getting to our systems. But what it's doing is adding an extra roadblock for other people to get into our systems. So with 2-factor authentication, many of the mail systems like Yahoo and Gmail, etc., have 2-factor authentication that you can enable. Again, they don't come defaulted with 2-factor authentication, though sometimes they'll encourage you to sign up for it. But any system that allows you to use it, I encourage you to do so. It enables you to just add an extra barrier in front of other people getting access to your systems. And then again, verify to clarify. If you're getting email requests or if you're getting documents sent to you by people, verify in a different media channel the legitimacy of that request. Again, maybe it's going out to their website, giving them a call, texting them, whatever it is, but verifying before you actually click on the links or download. So Wi-Fi security, because a lot of small businesses are on the go, right? You might not even have an office. Your office might be a co-working space, or it might be the airport. Who knows where you are? And so making sure that you're connecting securely, right? We always say at NCSA, think before you connect. And so making sure, one, that if you have a physical office, that you secure your Wi-Fi equipment, but also making sure that you're using a virtual private network or you're using your hotspot on your phone, that you're not transacting sensitive business information or transacting sensitive business procedures or whatever it is on a public Wi-Fi, right? So when you're at the airport, I had a money manager approach me the other day and says, so you really don't think I should be managing money of like net worth of millions of dollars on Starbucks Wi-Fi? I do it all the time. It's Starbucks. Surely it's safe. Like, no, you should not be managing people's wealth on the Starbucks public Wi-Fi. You should, and actually there are policies and procedures within their organization that they did not communicate to their wealth advisors. So, happens all the time. But being sure that you are connecting in a secure environment, all right? And the Chief Information Security Officer from Bank of America always says, he starts out the presentation with, just turn off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on your phones. You don't need them on all the time, right? Turn it off. It's draining your battery, and it's also constantly searching for signals, right? So disconnect your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. I know you love to listen to that podcast when you get back in the car, but turn the Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth back on when you get back in the car. You don't need it on right now, right? And then securing your home internet connection, making sure that we're taking these best practices and making sure that we're deploying them at home as well. Do I want to add another thing to Wi-Fi security? I had a great thought and it just escaped my mind, dang it. I might come back to it here in a moment. So quick wins for mobile devices. So we often, one thing I will actually add before I talk about this is updating software on all of your devices, not just mobile devices, right? We love to click postpone, postpone, postpone when there's a Windows update, right? Or any other update. Making sure that, those updates are patching security. They're making you safer. And so making sure that you set them to automatically update at a convenient time for you or your business, right? That's important. But oftentimes, we might be doing that well, but we forget about these devices that we're carrying around all the time. Our iPhones, or Samsung devices, Androids, whatever they are. Updating the software on those devices, right? Make sure we're doing it regularly. And if you have employees who have work devices, making sure that they have a process for updating their software, right? I also see a lot of small businesses and really just general consumers with 2 million apps on their devices. My gosh, download every single app you come across. What happens is, then they use it once and they're like, I don't really like it. So then they stop using it. And it's just sitting there on their device, cluttering up. And so we always say every spring, do a digital spring cleaning. Declutter your devices, right? Get rid of software and apps that you're not using on your devices anymore, right? Just get rid of them. Secure devices with passcodes. Turn off your discovery mode is a great quick win. Making sure that your discovery mode on your phone's turned off. Activating your Find device and remote wipe, right? Again, those salespeople out in the field who are losing everything, are you able to remotely wipe the data or the device clean so that if somebody picks it up, they can't access the data? And then again, the moment you download something or you adopt a new software, immediately configure those privacy settings and security settings. So quick wins with social networks, right? So limit administrative access. Again, we see small businesses oftentimes and big businesses giving that access to the youngest person in the organization, making sure that the right person in the organization has access to it, and that only certain people have administrative access. I would also say I've seen small businesses who they haven't done a good job of removing administrative access when firing employees. So there's a wonderful cafe down the street from my house in Philadelphia that fired an employee who managed their Facebook account, and that Facebook account went crazy because that employee was not happy. And so it took months for that cafe to get ownership back of that Facebook account, because it is not easy to go through the channels at Facebook to get access back, because that person changed administrator password and everything like that. So I will say, when you're hiring and firing, when you're hiring, making sure you're giving people the right access to do the job, but when you're firing, removing that access before you fired them. So social networks also two-factor authentication, again, configuring your privacy settings, making sure you're using your social media on updated website or web browsers. And lastly, take care with what you share. So the most obvious example that everyone gives is always, don't tell people you're going on vacation, right? Don't put a big Facebook post or Twitter post saying, bye everybody, I'm going to Aruba for 2 weeks, right? That's an obvious example. Not so obvious examples are when we're taking photos. There was an FTC, a Federal Trade Commission case, where a person was traveling for work overseas, took a selfie. Okay. He was in the hotel room, got a great view of, some statue or something behind him. But he was in his hotel room, and there was a mirror on the wall. And that mirror was reflecting a merger document on his desk. What do you think happened after that? So he saw himself, he saw the beautiful background, but he didn't see the mirror that was reflecting the contract. So thinking before you're sharing, it's not as obvious, again, as saying I'm going on vacation, I'm going to be out of my house for 2 weeks. Sometimes it's what is captured in reflections within that photo. All right. There's another example of politicians like to go into small businesses and do tours, right? They probably have done it in some of your businesses. There was this small electric utility. A politician was doing a tour, and they took a picture of the politician shaking the hands of the energy employees. And what happened was there were maps of the grid and keys posted on the wall behind them. That's critical infrastructure, right? You're just handing out information at this point. So making sure that you know what is in a photo. And because I have a little time, I will actually add one more piece that's not in my presentation, but I always harp on this anyway. For those of you who are parents, I will say making sure that you are making good decisions when posting about your children online, right? Give them the right to own their online presence. So when parents are posting silly photos or embarrassing photos of children doing crazy things, that lives with them for a very long time. And so when we're thinking about our own business presence online, when we're thinking about our own professional presence online, also be thinking about your children and what you're posting online about them. Because when you're posting on behalf of them or you're posting information about them, you're removing then their ownership of their online presence. That's just a tangent that I like to include. So again, with physical security, considering the physical setup of your office, can people just walk in and take your server? Can people just walk in and plug something into a computer? How secure is your office, right? Physical security also comes down to when we take photos, right? We're traveling, we might hand somebody a camera, and then we take 15 steps back because we want to be in the photo, with the nice monument or whatever, and then they're standing there with our phone. Why would you give a stranger your phone? It blows my mind. We're a very trusting community, but I will say, be thinking about that physical security. They could easily do something to that device. We also leave our laptops sitting out everywhere. Right? We keep carrying them in backpacks. I've got mine in a backpack, right? We walk around with them, we set them down, and then we go to the restroom without it, or we do whatever, because I trust people, right? No, I'm sorry. I think you're all probably very nice people, but I don't trust any of you. I am very skeptical of people, right? So I always travel with my equipment. And I also want to say, with disposal of sensitive data securely, so I think it was CVS or Walgreens, one, got in trouble because they were throwing out pill bottles into the dumpster without disposing of the information on them safely. So they got into a lot of trouble for that, right? There's a lot of critical information on a pill bottle sometimes. We get rid of our copy machine, right? Copy machine's done, so we just get rid of it, throw it out, do whatever we want. Those have hard drives, right? They have data stored on those. So we need to be wiping those. We often get rid of our laptops and cell phones, and we donate them to a wonderful cause. But then what happens if you don't wipe your data off of those before you donate them? And I will say, a lot of organizations will say, we'll wipe it for you. Don't. You take ownership of your data, right? You wipe it. And there are a lot of programs that can do that for you. But don't trust someone else to wipe it for you, unless it's a trusted vendor that you're currently working with, right? But making sure that you take ownership. And again, all of this is ownership. And what really comes down to it, in my perspective, again, is it's building it into the operations, into the behavior and the culture of the organization, and it's really improving your competitiveness as an organization. So there are resources available to you. And so, as I'd mentioned, the ftc.gov small business website, brand new. They have quizzes, they have videos, they have one-pagers that you can use. Great, simple information that's easy for a non-technical individual to understand. Commissioner mentioned the Homeland Security's Cyber Smart Initiative. I will also say very rarely does the federal government come together and do interagency efforts. And so it's very nice, particularly in the cybersecurity space, when they've been coming together recently. And the FTC piece is an example of that. But the Federal Interagency Ransomware Guidance document, it's about a 2-page document, helps you understand ransomware and what to do if something happens. These two resources on your right are about two-factor authentication. Again, my perspective is really encryption and two-factor authentication. If you do nothing else, please employ those two pieces to better secure your organization. And these are simple ways to do that. And the Telesign, that website actually walks you through exactly how to do it. I've worked with individuals who are who can barely use the computer, but this is very helpful to them because, again, it walks them through it step by step. I also, of course, the Colorado SBDC Tech Source, right? If you haven't been on their website, you want to check that out. Scam alerts. There are a lot of scams going on for, when Hurricane Michael and Hurricane Florence hit. Scammers took advantage of those poor people who were trying to get their businesses back in order, trying to get their homes back in order. And so the FTC does scam alerts. And coming up on the holiday season, there are a lot of holiday scams, gift card scams in particular. And so they've been pushing out guidance on that. So you can just register or subscribe to their alerts, and they're really great. They don't inundate you with emails, but it's really good advice. Another example, they pushed out information because you can now freeze your 3 credit score, or your credit profiles, right? So if you didn't know you can do that, you can now freeze your credit for free. They used to charge you, right? And you can also, the legislation is that you can, I forget exactly the amount of time, but they have a certain amount of time within like a few hours or maybe even an hour that if you request to unfreeze your credit, that they have to do it, right? And so if you haven't frozen your credit profiles, I encourage you to do that. They have a great blog on that, and it doesn't hurt your credit score. It just makes it harder for people to open up new lines of credit in your name if you don't need to do that. And then, of course, our website, staysafeonline.org. And I will say, if you are looking to build out your own information security policies and procedures, the SANS organization has templates. You don't have to start from scratch. They have some great templates that you can use and build off of. And so with that, I stopped with 4 minutes. So are there any questions? This is my email and our website. If you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, we're a nonprofit. We're here just to provide education and awareness. I specifically focus on small business, but on our staysafeonline.org website, we have a ton of resources. Some of them are focused on, during wedding season. A lot of people are planning their weddings on their iPhones and their tablets. How do you plan a wedding securely, right? How do you look for a job safely? How do you teach your kids about online security? So a lot of great resources that aren't specifically focused on small business. But I will say a lot of times if you're trying to get your employees to listen to cybersecurity, one way to do it is to tie it to securing their family, right? Making their family more secure. Then oftentimes, if they like their family, they'll listen. But not everybody likes the family, so it won't reach everybody. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to you unless there are any questions.
Always questions.
Always questions. Yes.
Hi, Samuel Thomas Eliot with Amnet IT. At the beginning of your presentation, you talked about that you encourage small businesses to outsource IT and cybersecurity.
Yes.
Why?
Sure. So we encourage small businesses because, again, they're not information security experts, right? They might be a butcher, a barber, owner of a biotech company. You know, I liken it to, they don't go out and become a firefighter when they want to protect their business from a fire. They don't need to go out and become a cybersecurity expert to protect their business from a cyber attack. But they need to have trusted individuals that they can turn to, whether that's with a contract that they embed and help them build their IT infrastructure, or whether that's just having someone that in a crisis they know that they can turn to, so they're not looking at the point of incident. And so I definitely encourage people to, if you're not comfortable taking it on, don't do it. The last thing I want to do is try to tell a small business to become a master of all things. And too many try to be that, and it opens them up to vulnerabilities. So that's my quick answer to that. Yeah. Yeah.
So with respect to a small business, and they go out to find somebody that's going to help them in one of those fields or arenas, is there some listing of the kinds of certifications that would support that?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different types of security certifications. And what I will say is that, like I said earlier, an IT professional isn't necessarily a cybersecurity professional, right? And so when you're looking at engaging someone to scale your IT infrastructure with cybersecurity in mind, you want to make sure that they do have some recognized security training, a background in working with cybersecurity in small business, that they have industry certifications like a CISSP, or there are a bunch of different certifications that they could have. So do you have, so in Delaware, I can speak to my, and then maybe you can add to it. Yes. So in Delaware, what we did was we looked at the cybersecurity providers who focused on small business, and these Delaware Small Business Development Center put together a list of vendors who were working in that space, who had certifications, that then, just like we did with legal and accounting and everything else, we would give them a list of people that they could then go interview and evaluate whether or not they wanted to engage with them. I don't know if you guys have a similar list.
So at the SBDC, what we've been doing is vetting a number of IT and cybersecurity providers in our region. And what we're doing is thanks, Daniel. So what we're doing in our region is that we are collecting information of amazing companies such as Firma IT, Amnet, there you go, that's for you, Sam, and a number of other providers that we have that help small businesses in the region. So we're vetting them, we're making sure they're small business friendly, and that list is on our website right now of the 6 or 7 consultants we have and their companies, and as more join our team, we'll be adding those to the list.
All right, I have 15 seconds. Anybody else? I'm usually pretty quick. Yes? There's no certification. No, she was talking about industry certification for individual, like professionals in the field of cybersecurity.
But they're not going to give you a certification as a third party to say you are now.
No, they're not going to certify a small business. Now, if you're a government contractor, there's the NIST 800-171. Again, it's not a certification. It is kind of a framework that they say this is what you need to do in order to do work with the federal government. But then they don't come and check it. They just kind of assume that you're doing it unless something goes wrong, and then they're going to come and see if you did it. But yeah, there's no certifying body for a small business to say you're. But what I will say is, when you're looking at building up your competitive advantage, if you as an organization can say we're NIST 800-171, ready or compliant used very loosely, then that's a competitive advantage piece. But that's mostly when you're looking at going and working with larger corporations, or when you're looking to work with the federal government, or a lot of state governments are even looking at that. But yeah, there's no compliance for small business, and I would be afraid of what that would look like And there's a lot of concern that the NIST cybersecurity framework, it came out and it was very complex. It's not something that a small business can understand, which is why we broke it down in this way. But the president signed just this year, a few months ago, an executive order to for NIST to break down the cybersecurity framework in a way that's more small business friendly. Again, there's no standard. We don't have a state or a national data breach notification law or a national standard. So it's all kind of mixed matched right now, but we're working on it. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.